been a busy news day here in Steelers Nation, as today the Pittsburgh Steelers have claimed wide receiver Adam Thielen off of waivers from the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings released Thielen early this week. Thielen wants to play for a team where A, he can play, and B, he has a chance to go on a playoff run. Now, you might be saying at home, but Jack, the Steelers stink, and that certainly has been the case the last 7 weeks. But Thielen clearly believes, with Aaron Rodgers, his good buddy, throwing him the football to finish off his NFL career, that he's going to have a chance to win here in Pittsburgh. And it certainly seems like the Steelers have assured him and his representation that he's going to have a chance to play here in Pittsburgh down the stretch. Obviously, I think that this is pretty underwhelming. It kind of feels like a Mike Williams type of addition here, where you're adding somebody that's a bit older, who's not what he once was, doesn't have much juice athletically anymore, and it's not going to move the needle all that much, especially because now Thielen is going to have to be fast-tracked this week to learn the Steelers' offense, get himself ready for Sunday. That's if he even plays on Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll have to hear from the Pittsburgh Steelers and what their plans are for him this week. But Thielen is somebody that is known as a really good hands catcher, even though suddenly he started dropping some footballs this year in Minnesota. Is one of the reasons why he hasn't been playing for the Minnesota Vikings over the last several weeks. But he's known as a savvy route runner, big slot kind of guy with traditionally really, really good hands. And that's a skill set that this Steelers wide receiver room doesn't really have right now, guys. You got DK Metcalf, who's more of that big body yak, he's not really a 50-50 ball winner. He's not a George Pickens type of big receiver. He's more of a catch it and run it. Or beat somebody deep kind of big receiver, but he's not really like a, savvy route runner. He's not really a 50-50 ball winner with like great contested catchability. And then, of course, you got Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, who are smaller guys that can run some good routes, and, they have decent hands and all that stuff, but they don't have size. What Adam Thielen brings to this wide receiver room is veteran savvy route running. He has the full route tree at his disposal, and traditionally he's had really good hands. Plus, he's been good friends with Aaron Rodgers for a long time. I'm sure he's probably thrown with Rodgers in the offseason over the last couple of offseasons, so he's probably thrown with Rodgers before. So this is something here that we talked about on the show yesterday, actually, if you catched our show yesterday, and I said that I could see the Steelers realistically adding him. The Steelers were interested in him and trading for him before the NFL trade deadline last year when he was 34 years old. And I think they might have even tried to trade for him before the season as well. Of course, he ended up getting traded to the Minnesota Vikings, and now you get him for free here at the end of the season. And, after not getting, anybody preseason at this position, after not getting Jacoby Myers, missing on Rashid Shaheed, not getting Jalen Waddle at the trade deadline, Thielen is about as good as you're going to get on the open market at this point in time, guys. I still consider him to be a pretty okay receiver, but obviously he's at the end of his NFL journey right now. He's 35 years old. You're just hoping you can get that one last little squeeze of juice out of Adam Thielen before he ends up retiring. So welcome into Steelers Talk Live, man. This wasn't the only breaking news we got today, Ponzi. We also got the news that Darius Slay is now out here in Pittsburgh. Asante Samuel Jr. has officially been signed to the Steelers' active roster, and Darius Slay is officially gonzo. I'm guessing Howie Roseman is already on the phone with Darius's representation, and I'm guessing Darius will probably go back to Philly because they could use some help at cornerback. But Asante Samuel Jr., I believe now, Ponzi, is this team's number 2 starting outside corner, with James Pierre now dealing with a concussion. We're going to get into our breaking news cut here in just a second here, guys. But if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you want to share your take on the Adam Thielen signing today, or Darius Slay being cut, or Asante Samuel Jr. being added to the active roster, if you have a take on that, donate to the show today. You guys can super chat down there in the chat room. We've already gotten, I think, a couple of super chats already, so we're going to get to those after our breaking news cut here. Ponzi, did we find somebody for Highlight Cut? We did. Great. Okay. So whenever Ponzi's ready to get us into this breaking news cut, we're going to go because obviously it is breaking news here on Steelers Talk. We got over 471 people watching live. We've got Truth Thong, one of my favorite names in the entire Steelers Nation here. We got Pool Hall, we got Elson, we've got Rig Steel, we got Jonathan Quinn, we got the Crusader Rises, we've got Donald Dunn, we got Space Lee, we got Lee Goddard, we've got Christopher Turner, we got Fletcher Comer, we've got John Malesko, we got Desert Storm, we got Kingsley Green, we got Bernard Nixon, we got a good crew. Steelers fans ready to talk some Steelers football here, guys. So without further ado, let's get into our breaking news coverage of Adam Thielen coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've got a double dose of breaking news here on Steelers Talk. The top story today, though, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers are claiming wide receiver Adam Thielen off of waivers from the Minnesota Vikings. Thielen is on his way to Pittsburgh, and my guess is he will immediately be injected as a starting receiver here in Pittsburgh for the final 5-game stretch of the 2025 NFL season. Now, before I break down this signing, why I kind of think this makes sense and why and what I think Thielen brings to this Steelers wide receiver room down the stretch, make sure you guys click that subscribe button because whenever Pittsburgh makes a big move, whenever they make a big signing or they cut somebody or whatever the case may be, we're going to make sure to get you guys coverage on that for free on this channel every single time. Of course, the offseason is right around the corner when all the big moves happen, so if you don't want to miss any of that action, click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And we actually called this yesterday, guys, where we had a video where we predicted that Adam Thielen could realistically sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I was saying how I thought that his connection to Aaron Rodgers, the fact that the Steelers have been looking for a number 2 receiver for a while now, all that different stuff just kind of lined up with what Adam Thielen was looking for. So if you guys want to actually see the proof there, we actually put out a video yesterday. So that's why you click that subscribe button, guys, is because we got this right. But Tom Pelissero did put it out there earlier today. He had the report that Adam Thielen is being claimed off of waivers by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is on his way to Pittsburgh to finish out his career. He's 35 years old, obviously. The 2 things that Thielen wanted, according to Pelissero, was that he wanted a chance to win a Super Bowl, and B, he wanted a place where he could play. All right, and I think, maybe the Super Bowl stuff in Pittsburgh, it's kind of laughable at this point after losing 5 of your last 7 games. But I think at this point, Pittsburgh was probably the best team that, really had an opening for Thielen to actually play this late into the season. So this was his best option. But you guys can take a look at his profile here. Our newest Steelers wide receiver, 35 years old, 6'2", 200 pounds. So bring some good size to the table. He's a big slot technician is what he's been known as throughout his career. He can play outside as well, but he's been known more as a big slot wide receiver that's a savvy route runner. Traditionally, he's had really good hands throughout his NFL career. Not going to give you much in terms of yak, not going to give you much in terms of verticality, but if you're looking for somebody that can make a tough catch over the middle of the field or towards the sideline, if you're looking for somebody that can run a route against man coverage and set guys up and find soft spots in zones and be just a consummate professional, Adam Thielen can be your guy. And Pittsburgh actually showed interest in Thielen at the trade deadline last year in 2024. The Panthers wanted like a 4th-round pick in exchange for him. That was a little bit too rich for a then 34-year-old Adam Thielen, but now you get him off of waivers here without having to give up any draft capital. And clearly, the Steelers have had Adam Thielen, on their eye here for a couple of years now. Now, my scouting report on Thielen, guys, is that he's not going to move the needle too much. All right, at this point, you're not going to find anybody on the waiver wire that is going to move the needle. And Thielen wasn't playing a whole lot in Minnesota. He's really lost all of the juice that he ever had athletically, and honestly, he came into the league as a kind of unremarkable athlete. It's one of the reasons why he went undrafted, but he brings really good size, run blocking, route running savvy, and then also traditionally good hands, but he did have some drop issues in Minnesota this year, so that is something to keep your eye on. But I do think that he injects right into the starting lineup. Now, it'll be interesting to see if Roman Wilson or Calvin Austin III maintains their quote-unquote starting spot in this Steelers offense. I would guess it's Roman Wilson because he can be a more long-term option for the Steelers, and they want to kind of see what he's got. Calvin's on the final year of his deal, and he's likely going to be going going, elsewhere next season. I think the Steelers are going to let him walk. So I think we'll see DK Metcalf, Adam Thielen, and Roman Wilson be the top 3 receivers in terms of the snap share for the rest of the season. And I would expect Thielen to get a pretty healthy workload as early as this week versus the Baltimore Ravens with so little time left in the season. I think they're going to want to ramp up Thielen as soon as they can. But just to take a look at what he did in Minnesota this year, he played while Jordan Addison was dealing with his suspension through the first 3 weeks of the year, and then they kind of took him out of the starting lineup. So he only has 18 targets on the year for just 8 catches. He had some drops, doesn't have a touchdown, just 69 yards on the season. So, this is certainly somebody that, I understand why people would say he's cooked, he's completely washed, and there's a very decent possibility that is exactly what Adam Thielen is at this point. But, you take a look at his numbers just last year in Carolina, had over 600 yards receiving. And then, obviously before that in 2023 had over 1,000. So, he's not that far removed from putting up, 1,000 yards in his age 33 season. Still, pretty darn good route runner. If he can get those hands that he's been known for throughout his career back here in Pittsburgh, if, maybe J.J. McCarthy just doesn't throw a catchable football, maybe Aaron Rodgers, we'll get something going here for Adam Thielen here in Pittsburgh. But at the end of the day, guys, this really shouldn't move the needle all that much. The Steelers still need to find a way to throw the ball down the field more efficiently. Adam Thielen's not going to help you do that. He's not going to separate, down the field necessarily. He's not going to get a bunch of yak after the catch or anything like that. Like, he does bring a skill set that the Steelers didn't have previously as kind of a big body route runner that traditionally has good hands. We'll see if those hands actually show up here in Pittsburgh. But at this point in the season, guys, why not? We were not getting enough production out of Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson, and this has been the type of receiver the Steelers have had their eye on for quite some time. Obviously, this is a far reduced version of like the style of wide receiver we could have potentially gotten in Jacoby Myers, but still the style of receiver that the Steelers were looking for, so at least there's that. So sound off for me down there in the comment section. Grade the signing of Adam Thielen for me down there in the comment section. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. For me, I'm going to give it like a B-. Like, I don't think it's a worthless signing. I think there's a chance Thielen could be a decent contributor for the Pittsburgh Steelers down the stretch here, and he does provide something to this wide receiver room that they didn't have previously, but he is 35 years old. He hasn't played very well this year when he was in Minnesota on all those different things. So I'll give it a B-. Let me know your grade down there in the comment section for today's pin question. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks, and while I tell you about Prize Picks, give me your grade for the Adam Thielen signing. Now let's have word from our sponsor today here at Prize Picks, and it is officially the holiday season, and in my opinion, this is the best time of the year for watching sports. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes for both collegiate and professional football. It's all happening at once, and while all that action is going on, there's one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super simple to play. Just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about Prize Picks is that how you play is up to you. If you want a little bit more flexibility, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if I'm feeling really strong about a particular lineup and you want a bigger payout, you can go for the power play. But no matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is, if you know ball. So for this weekend's matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, I'm taking the less on passing yards for Aaron Rodgers, the more on rushing yards for Derrick Henry, and the more on rush yards for Jaylen Warren. You guys can download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app today. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Now, the other bit of breaking news that we got here today is that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Darius Slay have agreed mutually to part ways after a lackluster season for Slay here in Pittsburgh. James Pierre was out playing Slay, and then, of course, Asante Samuel Jr. bringing him in, and now that he's been fully ramped up, there's just not a whole lot of space for Slay to actually play in the Steelers' defense here, and kind of like Thielen, Slay is a player that has already said this is the final year of his NFL career, and he doesn't want to spend the rest of his career on the bench. He wants to go somewhere where he can play, so I'm guessing he asked for his release from Pittsburgh. This is what Adam Schefter reported earlier today. Steelers and cornerback Darius Slay have mutually agreed to part ways. Slay's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, and Robert Bailey told ESPN Slay is interested in continuing to play and will consider signing with other teams, but his time in Pittsburgh has come to an end. And this is another one, guys, that we predicted over or just about a month ago. On November 11th, I posted this on X where I said that I thought that Darius Slay could potentially ask for his release from the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was right after the Steelers signed Asante Samuel Jr. And the other part of that prediction is I said I think Darius Slay will go play for the Philadelphia Eagles. Would not shock me if even by the time this video comes out, Darius Slay and his representation have already come to terms with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Slay down here, but we've been kind of on a roll here on Steelers Talk, and that's exactly why you guys click that subscribe button, because we give you guys the scoop before it actually happens. But what this means to me, guys, is that it's yet another bad cornerback signing in the offseason for Pittsburgh. Like, Pittsburgh was very clear. They thought they were getting a star-level cornerback with Darius Slay when they brought him in this offseason. They thought he was going to be able to man people up one-on-one, and that just goes to show you, kind of the downfall, of the evaluation of these cornerbacks from someone like Mike Tomlin, who definitely drove the ship in terms of bringing in a guy like Darius Slay this season. He was in charge of bringing in Patrick Peterson, right? It seems like this Steelers team in the offseason brings in these older players for who they used to be and not the players that they are now. I mean, we can look at Jalen Ramsey, for example, in that regard. I mean, they tried putting him one-on-one in man coverage versus Jamar Chase earlier this season. He hasn't been a true number one, lockdown man-to-man corner in many seasons at this point. So this Steelers team, and specifically Mike Tomlin, brings in these DBs kind of thinking he's going to get, the 25-year-old version of these players, and it's just not the case. And it's just unfortunate, and it's yet another failure there. But the good news is you did bring in Asante Samuel Jr. this season, and the fact that Asante Samuel Jr. and Adam Thielen both chose to come to Pittsburgh, right? These have been some of the higher profile names in free agency this year. They have decided to come to Pittsburgh this year, and now Asante Samuel Jr. has officially been signed to the active roster in a corresponding move with Darius Slay being released. And with James Pierre on the mend from a concussion, he's currently in concussion protocol. I would guess that means Asante Samuel Jr. Is going to get the starting nod versus the Baltimore Ravens this weekend. And with Joey Porter Jr. likely to be guarding the bigger and more physical DeAndre Hopkins, that would mean Asante Samuel Jr.'s first start in a Steelers uniform, guard Zay Flowers. That's going to be a hell of a matchup right there and a hell of a test for this young prospective future starting cornerback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But predict it for me down there in the comments section. What do you think is going to happen with Asante Samuel Jr. in future seasons when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers? Will Asante Samuel Jr. be a starting corner for the Pittsburgh Steelers next season? Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. Again, he's only on a one-year contract here in Pittsburgh. He's going to be a free agent next year. Do you think that he ends up getting brought back next year? Give me a yes or a no for your answer down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for our double dose of breaking news here on Steelers Talk. If you guys want more breaking news coverage all throughout the 2025 season and into the 2026 offseason, when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is the place that you guys need to be subscribed to. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, so make sure whoever's doing that highlight cut knows the thumbnails and thumbnail room there, Ponzi. And to send me the link, the Twitter, the YouTube link when it gets out on the channel. All right, let's get to some of your super chats here, guys. We got over 600 people watching live. If you have questions, if you want to get on the show, if you want to, talk about the wide receiver room, will Adam Thielen play this week? If he does, what will his role be? Does he already get ahead of Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin III? We're going to talk about it all before we get into our next segment. And yes, we still have another segment here, guys. But let's talk some Thielen. Let's talk some Slay. Bernard Nixon coming in with a 2 says, will they bench A-Rod or Rod for R this week? Is that Rodgers for Rudolph? I think that's what Bernard is asking for. No, they're not going to bench Rodgers. No. Here's the way it's going to work, guys. This is Aaron Rodgers' season. So as long as the Steelers are still in the hunt for the playoffs, Rodgers will start that football game, unless he's injured. And he is injured, but it sounds like he's going to play through this injury. So as long as Aaron Rodgers is physically capable of playing a football game and the Steelers still have a chance to win the division, Aaron Rodgers will play that game. So we're still very much in the hunt for the AFC North. We're tied at the top of the division, so it's not even close to the spot where they would consider benching Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion. And then if they bench Rodgers this season, I think it would be for Will Howard, not for Mason Rudolph. Rudolph has been terrible for the Steelers, in the last 2 games that he has played in Chicago, and then the limited action he had last week against the Bills. Of course, threw an interception, a really bad one. If you're going to bench Rodgers, that means the season is over. And if the season is over, then you might as well give Will Howard a chance to see what he's got, to see if he's got enough talent, enough ability, where the Steelers should consider making him next year's option at quarterback if he can play well down the stretch. So don't think it's time to bench Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think it's going to be for at least a couple more weeks until they make that decision, if they make it. Bernard with another 2 says, should A-Rod call guys out? I mean, he has been calling guys out. He has been. Now, he might be asking, is that the right thing? And, listen, man, you can make an argument that his negativity, when things go bad, you can make an argument that his negativity feeds into the rest of the team, and they don't perform well when they're frustrated and all that different stuff. And you can make that case, because usually it's the case that when the offense is struggling and A-Rod is being a little pissy and he's trying to hold guys accountable, that negativity might get through the rest of the locker room, and that might affect the way that they play, and it might affect their resiliency. But, would you prefer Aaron Rodgers, trying to hold guys accountable, or would you rather prefer Russell Wilson with the positive stuff? Now, you can make an argument that the positive stuff from Russ last year, it kept them in the games. They were resilient. They had a number of games where, they were losing in the second half, and they ended up coming back to win. And they haven't done that this year. It's been the other way around. They've had, I think it's 4 games where they've had a lead in the first half, going into halftime, and they've lost that game. So, certainly the mental toughness of this group has not been phenomenal this year, Bernard. It needs to get better. $2 from Bernard says, happy birthday to Aaron Rodgers, 42 years old, Ponzi. And, I was kind of annoyed when I woke up, because on Steelers Twitter, there was probably about 50 different people making a sarcastic comment about how we have a 42-year-old as our starting quarterback. And, listen, man, we knew how old Aaron Rodgers was when we signed him, right? And we knew it was going to be a 1, maybe 2-year thing when we got him. Let's just hope that the long-term answer here in Pittsburgh, is a good one. $2 or $5 here from Jordan says, I think instead of getting Thielen, we should have just started Skoranek. Guy's a dog, and he does a lot of the same things Adam does. I don't think Skoranek has the same level of receiving chops in terms of his route running and in terms of traditionally the hands. Skoranek, has been known as somebody where, if he's catching the ball, he's got to be wide open. He doesn't have a really good route tree or anything like that. He's not going to route anybody up. He's a really good blocker, and I love him as a special teamer and as a blocking receiver. And, I like him on early downs, because you can run him across the field on some of those play-action boots. We saw him get a touchdown. The first touchdown of the season was to Skoranek this year against the Jets. And, when Skoranek plays more, the run offense tends to do better. So I don't necessarily disagree with you, Jordan, that they should play Skoranek more. But, they're obviously bringing in Thielen for a reason. They've had their eye on Thielen for multiple years at this point. They tried getting him last year at the trade deadline. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried getting him before the season as well this season. Before the Vikings ended up getting him. And now you get him without having to give up any draft capital. So it'll be interesting to see here. Obviously, it's a very short period of time to get ramped up. He's never played with Aaron Rodgers on an actual NFL team before. I think he's thrown with him in off seasons before because they're friends. And I guarantee you Rodgers was a big reason why Thielen is here in Pittsburgh right now. But, Thielen is somebody that's, been a part of a lot of winning teams, man. He really has. And, he's trying to give himself one more shot, and he's going to have that shot for the final 5 weeks of the season this year. $2 from Bernard says there's nothing wrong with A-Rod being washed at 42. I don't disagree, man. 42 years old is pretty old, man. A father time comes for all of us. Bernard says I still think A-Rod is a leader. I still think he is too, man. But there's something to be said where, like, if you're around negative people, that negativity can get into you as well. So, like, I heard Mike Tomlin talking about, how the team was getting frustrated, in the second half of the game on Sunday. And first of all, that tells you that the team cares. All right, the team, the guys in the locker room, they care about winning, and they care about putting a good product on the field. And, the sign of a good team, I think, is that when, things aren't going right, frustrations do boil over, because that's not good enough. And, something that I do appreciate about the Steelers players and the Steelers coaching staff is that they fully acknowledge, this is not good enough. We got to be better, and we got to take accountability. So, I appreciate that aspect of things, but, I'd rather you fix a problem than tell me you're sorry about the problem. You know what I'm saying? I don't want you to tell me you're sorry. I want you to fix the problem. And, the Steelers have not fixed the problem to this point, so I'm hoping that they can do that down the stretch, because I really do think that a lot of these players in the locker room deserve it. I think Rodgers, in many ways, is a very good leader, Bernard. But, it's very true that he is pretty prickly and negative, when things aren't going right. And when that happens, that negativity might be because he's the leader of the team. His attitude and his personality can become the personality of the team. And if he's negative, the rest of the team is negative. And if the rest of the team is negative, then, it's a negative downward spiral. You can make an argument that that is the case, in my opinion. $2 from Dan Flaherty says, does Adam open up downfield opportunities for Roman and Calvin Austin III? Honestly, I don't think so, Dan. I don't. I think teams are going to continue to play two-man with two high safeties. They're going to continue to play cover 5. I think where Adam might bring some value there is that he still has some decent route running chops. He's not going to be able to run away from people on crossers and stuff like that, but in terms of savvy types of routes where he sets guys up, finds soft spots in zones, and then he can hopefully use, he's been a really good hands catcher, man. He was Bryce Young's safety blanket over the last 2 years in Carolina on third downs and stuff like that, because he would come down with tough catches. I mean, just last year, he had an insane one-handed catch against Tampa Bay where it's thrown behind him and he comes around, he just catches it, just snatches it out of the air. Thielen, traditionally has really, really good hands, and, he's got really good route running chops. And he's not going to run away from people, but Jacoby Myers, for example, if we would have got him, he wouldn't have been running away from people. That's not the type of receiver that he is. He's a savvy route runner with good hands, who's a tough guy. Adam Thielen is a similar type of receiver, but he's just not as good or as young as Jacoby Myers is. He doesn't quite have as much juice, obviously. So you're kind of getting, you wanted Jacoby Myers, and then Omar Khan said we have Jacoby Myers at home, and Jacoby Myers at home ends up being Adam Thielen. So Kivo, TKL, says, do you think we'll see Will as QB2 this week? Honestly, no. I think that Rudolph will continue to be the backup quarterback. And, honestly, I think when we see Will usurp Mason on the depth chart is when Will potentially gets a start. If the Steelers lose 3 games in a row, they only have 2 games left, they're out of playoff contention. Let's say the Steelers lose the next 3, Ravens win the next 3, and they're out of playoff contention for the final 2 games. Then I think we'll see Will Howard for the final 2 games, and we'll see what he can do. But I don't think we'll see Will usurp Mason Rudolph, the veteran backup option, as QB2 this season. I just don't think so. I personally, I would think about it because Mason's been so bad, but I think we'll continue to see Will as QB3 until further notice. Justin with a 2 says number 81 might be the worst offensive player in the NFL. You said it, Justin. Jonnu Smith is absolute dog crap. He is this year's version of Allen Robinson, Van Jefferson. I know he plays tight end, and those other 2 guys play wide receiver, but they both play the pass-catching position in every single offseason. I mean, under Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan, over the last 3 or 4 off seasons, right, you can bank on 2 things. Number 1, they're going to bring in a corner that's going to heavily disappoint here in Pittsburgh. All right, Patrick Peterson. Dante Jackson disappointed towards the end of the season last year, and now Darius Slay. Okay, you're going to get a corner that's going to disappoint you, and then B, you're going to add an offensive player that they think is going to fix the problem at the pass-catching position, but he's going to be completely worthless in the offense, and then despite that player being completely worthless in the offense, they will refuse to take him off the field. All right, Allen Robinson started 17 games and got a full workload in 2023, had 0 touchdowns the entire season. How is that even possible? All right, he doesn't play another snap, by the way, in the National Football League after that season as a full-time starter. Then Van Jefferson, full-time starter for the Steelers last year. He was this team's wide receiver too, had less than 300 yards receiving, 17 games played, had no injuries. How is that possible? Then you got Jonnu Smith. This year, you bring him in. He's coming off a Pro Bowl caliber season where Miami used him a bunch on screens and all this different stuff. And now you bring him in, and he was supposed to be the solution as that quote-unquote number 2 pass catcher in the offense. And he's still getting that workload. But guess what? He's on pace to get, like the same amount of yards Van Jefferson and Allen Robinson got when they were here. It's an absolute joke what Jonnu Smith has been for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense this year. All right? And just last week, he's still getting top 3 snaps among offensive pass catchers in this offense. More than Calvin Austin III, more than Roman Wilson, more than Pat Freiermuth. By the way, Roman Wilson and Pat Freiermuth lead this team in yards per target, and they are getting the least amount of snaps among pass catchers, Justin. So it's coaching malpractice. I mean, this pass catching group is already it came into the season, and it still is, one of the least talented in the National Football League. But even then, they're not using their best players in this group, right? They're not using Pat Freiermuth, their best receiving tight end. They're not using Roman Wilson, who has gotten open down the field 3 times, at least, over the last 2 weeks, and he's wide open. Quarterback can't hit him down the field. All right? That's not on Roman. That's on the quarterbacks. And, Adam Thielen, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin III, DK Metcalf, Jonnu Smith. It doesn't matter who are the pass catchers out there, guys. If Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph, or whoever the fuck is quarterbacking this team, can't throw the ball down the field. All right? We're 0 for 13 over the last, 38 days now? Almost over a month now. We are 0 for 13 on deep pass attempts with 3 interceptions. That is abysmal. Okay? All right, here's the tweet from Ben from CBS. It was 36 days 2 days ago, so it's 38 days now. It's been 38 days since we've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers complete a pass of 20-plus air yards. And, that's a combination of things, right? That's a combination of quarterback play, that's a combination of wide receiver play, and that's a combination of offensive play calling. It all coalesces, and they got 0 deep completions. And you can see the result. Defenses are taking away the underneath stuff. They're taking away the stick routes and the spot concepts and the spacing stuff that the Steelers want to run. Well, if you want to open that stuff up, throw the goddamn ball down the field and maybe try and complete a pass. All right? Get the ball to DK Metcalf on a post, or Calvin Austin III on a post, or Roman Wilson on a post, or on a go, or on a deep crosser. It's just an idea, Ponzi. It's just an idea, man. I don't know. I'm not trying to say that this is like a great wide receiver, tight end group, because it's not. But the fact that they are using the guys the way that they're using them, and they're not using the most effective players that they do have, it's just making it even worse. You're taking a bad situation and making it worse with bad personnel management. And I'm sick and tired of it, man. So, adding Adam Thielen, it's not going to matter unless, Aaron Rodgers steps up his game, period. Bernard, with another 2, says, do you think Aaron Rodgers is playing scared? It depends what you mean by scared. I mean, I actually think he's had some really good pocket maneuverability moments. Even on the strip sack fumble, guys, he maneuvered the pocket really well there for a time, and then, he stopped to try and to look at the field and see who was open. There was just nobody down there that was open. All right, so that's not even on Rodgers. Now, there's a couple plays on there where you can certainly point to and say, yeah, he should have stayed in the pocket and he should have progressed over the middle of the field, or, he shouldn't leave that pocket there, whatever. But I don't think it's nearly as big of a problem as people make it out to be on Steelers Twitter. I really don't. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, appreciate you. All right, well, I got to do something real quick here, guys. Ponzi, take over here for a second, and then we're going to get into our second segment of the day here, guys. What's that, Ponzi? Yeah, read Super Chats, do stuff like that. So I got to go do something just real quick. It'll take like 2 minutes. Be right back to do our second segment here on this live show. We're going to be talking about the latest surrounding the Mike Tomlin rumors. We'll talk about some of the latest reporting on the possibility of Mike Tomlin being fired or traded. And then we got a couple of ideas in terms of where Tomlin could be traded to if he does end up getting traded. So, Ponzi, take it away. I'll be back here in a second.
So, Jace Mitchell with the 2 saying, why hasn't MVS been added into the mix as of yet? I mean, I assume it's taking him a little bit longer to get ramped up, and also it's just one of those things where maybe he's just not there.
He's probably not very good, Jace.
Yeah, that's just being the brutal reality of it is that he's probably not good. Like, just lost it all.
Plus, I don't think he brings anything to this offense that Calvin or Roman doesn't already bring. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter if MVS gets open deep because that's all he can do if Rodgers can't throw the ball down the field, which he hasn't been able to do. Like, we've seen Roman Wilson get open and stack corners down the field. It's
just Rodgers hasn't been able to hit him, or Rudolph hasn't been able to
exactly.
hit him.
So until, the Steelers prove they can actually throw the ball down the field, MVS has very little value to the Steelers offense. So, I think it's a combination of A, he's not very good, B, his role doesn't really add anything to what the Steelers already have because they already have speed. And then C, they don't want to. They don't have anybody on the active roster. They actively want to take off the active roster
for MVS.
Exactly. The thing about Thielen is that he does bring something to the table that no other receiver on this team brings. All right, he's a big body route runner with good hands. Like that. Like we haven't had one of those all season. So he does bring something to that degree. The only thing MVS brings that maybe Roman or Calvin doesn't, Ponzi, is size.
Oh my God. All right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's one of those things where if he was clearly could bring something to this offense, he would be brought up. Because they brought up Asante Samuel, and now he's on the active roster full-time. So, JV Free with the 2 saying AR is not the main problem. Fix coaching, win. I mean, yeah, I agree. You got to put your players in the right position to succeed. And the Steelers are not doing that. But Jonnu Smith is out-snapping some of your wide receiver 2s and 3s, like Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin. Come on. What are we doing? He shouldn't even be out-snapping like Pat Freiermuth, another tight end. But he is. And so, I mean, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, if you're going to win in this league, you have to adapt. And the Steelers just don't do that. I will say Aaron Rodgers is a problem, but that's because they're not putting him in the right position to succeed. If they really wanted to, bring the best out of their players, especially in offense and defense, they would just do things schematically that make their players in the right position. Make Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson run more in-breakers over the middle of the field. It's take Jonnu Smith off the field. Like, let's be for real. Davion Brown with a 2. Trade Tomlin and 2 starters. We need to retool. I mean, I don't think trading Tomlin is a bad idea, but I don't understand your second part of that, of 2 starters. Like, who would you want to trade? Who would trade for? Like, who do you want to, like Jalen Ramsey? No, I would think you would want Jalen Ramsey on your team.
Alex Highsmith, maybe.
Alex Highsmith, yeah, I could see that. But, like, it's one of those things where it's like, what, you want to trade TJ Watt? No, you're not going to be able to get rid of that contract anyway. So I think the only contract that you could really get is Alex Highsmith. And I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that Nick Herbig could fill that role even better. I mean, Highsmith has missed, 6 games this season?
Yeah, he's missed quite a few.
And it's, the best ability is availability, as they say. But, I mean...
All right, we do have one Venmo here that we'll get to.
Okay.
It's
$5 from Stanley. I don't trust Tomlin to develop a QB. I'm tired of his lack of making adjustments. So, his lack of making adjustments. It's time for a change.
All right, I'm good to be put back on screen here, Ponzi. I'm right there with you, Stanley. listen, man, if you had the right OC in place to develop a quarterback, I could get there, but like I don't think that the right QB is in place or the right OC is in place either. Like I'm not sure if I trust Arthur Smith to develop a quarterback either. He had a chance to develop Marcus Mariota in Tennessee. It didn't work. Had a chance to develop Desmond Ridder, another younger quarterback. Didn't work. Had a chance to develop Justin Fields last year. Didn't work. I just don't know if this coaching staff is capable of, or frankly that we want them to want to trust these guys with another quarterback because they obviously screwed up the Kenny Pickett situation. I'm right there with you, Stanley. If they're going to be drafting a quarterback early next year, I would prefer for, a different head coach to be here and a different OC, different play caller, all that different stuff. So I'm right there with you, Stanley. Appreciate the 5. Elevate LT's coming in with a $1 Venmo here. He had a kind of a longer message. And he said, Jack, I have a gut feeling this team is going to finish 11-6 and win the division, or 10-7 and win the division. I hope this past game was a wake-up call. Usually Elevate is the real negative one on game days, but now he's are you really expecting them to go 11-6, so win the rest of their games? Elevate LTs?
I guess Adam Thielen.
Adam Thielen, is the straw that stirs the drink, I guess. I don't think they'll go 11 wins, Elevate. You look at the rest of the road here, all right? This is what I'll say, Ponzi. If you get the Aaron Rodgers that we had the first 7 weeks of the season, the first 6 games of the season, if we get that Aaron Rodgers, I think they could even sweep the Baltimore Ravens, especially if they can stop Derrick Henry on the ground, which is a tough task for sure. If you can sweep Baltimore, which isn't impossible. You did it 2 years ago with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, for Christ's sakes. If you can sweep Baltimore, if you can take care of business against Miami and Cleveland, that gets you 4 wins out of 5, and that gets you to 10 wins. So I think 10 is possible. I just don't see them going 5-0 the rest of the way. Like, especially with the way this team's playing. Now, if you're telling me that this defense plays the way that they played against Indianapolis and Cincinnati the rest of the way, and if you're telling me this offense played the way that they played the first 7 weeks of the season, okay, I can maybe get on board with that. But I think that this team needs to make drastic improvements in a very short amount of time to even think about going 5-0 down the stretch. Now, the beauty of this situation, Ponzi, is that you can go 3-2 down the stretch and still win the division. You can still go 9-8 and win this division because Baltimore has a tough schedule down the stretch too. They got to play us twice, then they got the Patriots, and they got the Packers as well. And then they get the Bengals again next week, and they just lost to the Bengals at home. You're going to be facing Burrow and the Bengals again next week on the road in Cincinnati. So, I don't think that'll be an easy game. So they got kind of a tougher schedule. Honestly, I think the Ravens' schedule is tougher than the Steelers' is down the stretch. Like, if you have a choice between Miami, Detroit, and Cleveland, or Cincinnati, Packers, Patriots, which one are you taking, right? I think the Steelers have the quote-unquote easier path. So there's that. Still think it's very possible the Steelers could win the division, but in order to do that, you're going to have Rodgers play at least a league average level. And by the way, that's all we've asked for, right? We saw what this offense and what this offense could do with just a league average or slightly above average quarterback when Aaron Rodgers was playing at that level in the first 6 games of the year. But then after that, he's been like a bottom 3 starting quarterback in the game. He can't throw the ball down the field. The accuracy, especially down the field, is spotty. It's just not good, man, and he needs to play a lot better, and the defense needs to play a lot more consistent if they're going to put together a 5-game win streak to win this division, LTs. But the beauty of it is that you can still win a division championship with a 9-8 record this year. We kind of lucked out in that regard, so here's to hoping the Steelers can win the division. But coming up next year, we still got another segment here on this edition of Steelers Talk Live, and it is the latest reporting on head coach Mike Tomlin's status in terms of his future status of being the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got a lot to talk about on today's show. A lot of national media personalities are talking about this topic this week after an embarrassing loss to the Bills and the Fire Tomlin chants that rang out in Acrisure Stadium on Sunday evening. It's definitely a hot topic here, so let's talk about it right now, right here on Steelers Talk. Steelers Nation, the national media thinks you're crazy for wanting Mike Tomlin to be fired or traded at the end of this season. Today, we're going to be breaking down what guys like Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, and more are saying about Mike Tomlin's future status as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, why he's unlikely to be fired, but why he might be traded at the end of the season. Now, before we get into the Mike Tomlin talk today, guys, kick us off down there in the comments section by letting me know the percent chance that Mike Tomlin is not the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers next season. Put it on a scale of 0, meaning no chance he's not the head coach, to 100%, meaning that he is definitely out the door. He's gone. He's not going to be back next season. So let's start here with Ian Rappaport, who said that the Fire Tomlin rumors and the chants that rang out at Acrisure Stadium last Sunday evening are quote-unquote ridiculous, and says that there is no way that the Pittsburgh Steelers fire Mike Tomlin at the end of this season. This is what Rapp had to say yesterday. Even discussing firing Mike Tomlin is completely ridiculous. Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL. If he ever became available, he'd be snatched up literally a matter of no time if he wanted to. He's a Super Bowl champion. They make the playoffs every year, most consecutive non-losing seasons basically ever. Now, I don't see any circumstances where Mike Tomlin gets fired by Art Rooney. I really just don't see it based on my understanding of what he's done, that relationship, his meaning to the entire organization. If Mike Tomlin is not going to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026, which at this point would be a major, major surprise, it will be because he takes a step back and doesn't want to do that again. I don't see that coming at all, but that is my understanding of the situation, despite what some fans may chant. And then Adam Schefter on the Pat McAfee show also weighed in on this yesterday, and he shares a very similar sentiment where he highly doubts the Pittsburgh Steelers will consider firing Mike Tomlin at the end of this season. He says, I have always felt like if a change ever occurs there, it's going to be because Mike Tomlin doesn't want to be back there. Mike Tomlin, again, I know the people in Pittsburgh do not like it, but he has not had a losing season in his 18 years as a head coach. I can say that if the Steelers did not want Mike Tomlin there, and maybe the message is stale, maybe he moves on like Andy Reid and finds a new home. Andy Reid's time in Philly had run out, and he goes to Kansas City, and you see how that worked out for him. Of course, he drafted Patrick Mahomes, but it worked out incredibly well, and the Chiefs love having him. If Mike Tomlin were a coaching free agent, he would automatically become the number one coaching free agent out there. He could have any coaching job he wanted. He could have any broadcasting job he wanted. They are not firing Mike Tomlin. That's not going to happen. And then speaking of people that work for ESPN, there was this clown on Get Up yesterday who had this to say about the idea of trading Mike Tomlin. He says, I just think right now, do Mike Tomlin a favor and fire him. He would get a job anywhere else in the league in 2 seconds. 2 seconds, because I think this guy, here's what I know about Mike Tomlin. He's a leader. He's an absolute leader. Now, guys, when it comes to this entire discussion, especially in the national media that don't watch the Steelers every single week, I hate the condescension from guys like Rappaport and Schefter and especially Rex Ryan on, the idea of, Pittsburgh Steelers fans being ridiculous or spoiled or whatever because, we're not okay with going 9-8 and 10-7 and losing in the first round of the playoffs every single year. If it happens, every year for like a 3 or 4 year period, that's something. But if it's happening every year for pretty much an entire decade straight, there's something wrong, all right? There's just something wrong, and Steelers fans absolutely have every right to want some change, to acknowledge maybe that Mike Tomlin is a good head coach and he provides some stability and, he's not all bad, but, it's certainly fair to want a new, fresh voice in the building, some different approach to team building, all this different stuff, and all these guys saying, oh, the Steelers fans are ridiculous for even suggesting firing the almighty Mike Tomlin. It's It's just absolutely insulting. It's offensive, and, these guys don't know what they're talking about. But, they do strike at a fundamental reality here, guys, which is that the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that really prides itself on never firing a head coach in the history of their organization during the Super Bowl era. They've only had 3 head coaches. There's been more popes during that stretch of time than Pittsburgh Steelers head coaches. They're very proud of that fact. And especially if the Steelers make the playoffs, if they have another winning season, it does seem extremely unlikely that Art Rooney would pull that trigger and fire Mike Tomlin, especially because he still has multiple years left on his contract, and the Steelers would have to pay Mike Tomlin millions of dollars per season over the next several years to not coach for them, and I just don't think that that's something the Steelers are going to be willing to do. But here's the truth of the matter, guys, all right? The Steelers under Mike Tomlin have become a beacon of stability, all right? You can't have, whatever it is, 18 non-losing seasons in a row without having a stable, somewhat winning culture, all right? You're always competitive no matter what's going on, no matter if you have backup quarterbacks in there, no matter if you have bad OCs, no matter if you have bad defenses. Mike Tomlin, despite his faults, has found a way to bring stability here to Pittsburgh, and that's worth mentioning and admiring. But they're also not a beacon of excellence, and that's what we want to be. We want to be the Kansas City Chiefs. We want to be the Buffalo Bills. We want to be the New England Patriots when they were in their dynasty, right? We want to be the team that is consistently competing for Super Bowls. We don't want to be the team that's just okay making it to the playoffs as a wild card and then getting beaten by 30 when you get to the playoffs, right? The standard should be excellence. It shouldn't be stability. You strive for stability, and that's a good thing to have. It's a great thing to have, but the goal is to be excellent, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, frankly, have not been excellent in a very, very long time at this point. And someone that agrees with me on that is former Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers back when Tomlin had this team playing at an excellent level, and that's James Harrison, who played multiple seasons, won a Defensive Player of the Year trophy in a Mike Tomlin defense. And this is what he had to say this week. I thought he said it perfectly. Something has to be done. I know that Steelers historically don't move on from coaches, but I think it's time that history be made, because right now the only history that we're making is being the worst Pittsburgh Steelers team statistically in the history of the organization. The legacy of the 1970s Steel Curtain defense to the Blitzburg defense of the 2010s, and to see what it looks like now is unbelievable. I'm going to be a Steeler fan for life, but I like to be a Steeler fan that believes we can win a game and doesn't just hope we can win a game. And right now, I done lost hope. So that's really well said by James Harrison there, who's actually done a really good job as a podcast host now. Check out his podcast along with Joe Hayden if you haven't already. But I think that, excellence in this organization has passed Mike Tomlin by. When he had a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, when he had a great OC in Bruce Arians, and then he had all-time great talent on defense, his leadership style, his ability to run a tight ship and a good organization was good enough to win one Super Bowl and get back to another. But once those pieces started to fade and Tomlin became more involved in team building and a lot of the decisions as to which players you bring in, which players you pay, which players you don't pay, this team has really fallen into mediocrity. And even though they've maintained a stable winning culture here and a competitive culture here in Pittsburgh, it is not an excellent winning culture the way that you see from the New England Patriots right now, or the Kansas City Chiefs during their dynasty, or that Belichick had in New England for all those years. And absolutely, Mike Tomlin is a big reason why this team has not gotten back to that excellent standard that Steelers fans hold for this organization. Over the years, he's had poor game management. He does not handle challenges well. He doesn't handle timeouts at the end of halves well. I personally don't think that he manages the game all that well, which is weird because he's the longest tenured head coach in professional sports, and he's been with the same team this entire time. He still hasn't figured out game management despite all of his experience. Also, he's had multiple poor offensive coordinator hires. And listen, man, if you could just drop Bruce Arians right back as the OC of this team and you could let him make the decisions as to who to bring in at quarterback and what schemes to run on offense, then yeah, I think this team could potentially get back to playing at a Super Bowl level. All right, but that's not the case. Mike Tomlin's in charge of picking the personnel, both on the roster, player-wise, and also on the coaching staff with the OCs, and he's had 4 straight guys that have not been great hires, and that's on the head coach for identifying offensive play calling talent. Also, he's had multiple poor defensive coordinator hires. Keith Butler was good at times for sure, but like he was definitely inconsistent. That now Terrell Austin has been an absolute disaster in many spurts here in his tenure as the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive coordinator. Tomlin brought him in. Also, they drafted the wrong quarterback in Kenny Pickett in the first round in that terrible quarterback draft class. Now, obviously there was no good quarterbacks in that draft class, really, but, it is what it is, and they didn't develop that quarterback in the right way. And then, of course, from a pure team-building philosophy, they spend too much on defense, all right? They spend too much on guys like T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward and Jalen Ramsey, these older veteran players, when you should be spending your money on the offensive side of the ball. All the best teams in the league do it. The Steelers do not. They go the opposite direction, and you get mediocrity as a result. And let's face it, guys, this Pittsburgh Steelers roster right now, it appears that they need surgery, not Band-Aids. And the Steelers, and I'm kind of stealing this line from Emmanuel Acho, by the way, who had this point this week, but like you're bringing in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Ramsey, all these older players, Darius Slay, all these different guys that just haven't panned out, and they're, short-term Band-Aids, older players that you're hoping can help you win now when this Steelers team should be injecting this roster with younger talent. And, they've started to kind of prioritize that a little bit more. They let some veterans walk in free agency last year to stack up on comp picks, and now they got double-digit draft picks in next year's NFL draft. But, like, if this team is going to be heading towards a rebuild and they're going to be injecting this team with new talent, especially a new franchise quarterback, I don't think I trust Mike Tomlin with a rebuild here in Pittsburgh. I don't trust him to pick the right players, especially early on. I don't trust him to pick the right quarterback because he hasn't been able to do it for many seasons on end here. And honestly, does Mike Tomlin even want to do a full-scale rebuild here in Pittsburgh? Maybe the Steelers don't need major surgery. They still got some good veteran players. They got some good young players as well. Like, really, the Steelers are one really good offseason away from really getting back to playing excellent football. But it still requires surgery. You can't just put Band-Aids on it. And unfortunately, Mike Tomlin's team-building philosophy over the last half-decade or so is just to throw some Band-Aids on there and hope we can become a Super Bowl champion. That's just not really the way it works in the National Football League. And then here's another thing, guys. And, if Tomlin is as hot of a commodity as Rappaport and Schefter and all these guys and Rex Ryan are saying, if he would have a job immediately and he would be the number one head coaching commodity on the market, if he were to be made available, the Pittsburgh Steelers should absolutely cash in on that. If there's going to be a bidding war to trade for Mike Tomlin, just imagine the amount that you can get for Mike Tomlin, a future Hall of Fame head coach, a Super Bowl champion, stability in the organization. You know how many teams in the National Football League would just be happy with a stable winning culture and get to 9-8 and 10-7 every year? I mean, there's a lot of teams that would pay a lot to get a head coach like Mike Tomlin in their building. And Sean Payton, who had retired at that point, was worth a first and a second round pick to the Denver Broncos to take him out of retirement and make him their next head coach. And look at where the Broncos are now. All right, they are competing in the AFC. They're 10-2. They're doing great under Sean Payton. And I'm sure the Saints are happy with the first and second round picks that they got in exchange for Sean Payton. So if Payton, who didn't have as good of a resume as Tomlin has right now, got a first and a second round pick, what can the Pittsburgh Steelers get for Mike Tomlin on the open market if he, like Rapp and Schefter say, he's going to be the most hot commodity on the open market if they end up putting him up for a trade? And remember, Tomlin does have a no-trade clause, all right? So even though there would probably be a bidding war for Mike Tomlin's services, Tomlin would have to sign off on the team that he would eventually get traded to, all right? But there are some whispers that Mike Tomlin would be open to a trade and that he might be looking for a change of scenery. Coming up here, we're going to be talking about some of the rumors that are surrounding that. Diana Rossini had a very interesting comment this week, as well as some trade ideas of some places where I think Mike Tomlin would be open to going into next offseason. But before we get into the rest of today's show, guys, I want to give you guys a great opportunity to get this Salute to Service Steelers hoodie in your collection today. You guys can go to chatsports.com/pitsalute25. I really like the design of this year's Salute to Service stuff, guys. It really goes really heavy on the really classic Army green, not too much camo. And I'm not much of a camo guy, but I love Army Green, and you guys can get that American flag patch on the side there. That's absolutely fantastic. You got that Steelers patch on the chest. If you like this design, you guys can get it right now at chatsports.com/pitsalute25 for yourself or somebody that you love. And also, when you use our link there, guys, and you make a purchase, part of the proceeds go back to us here at Steelers Talk. So if you guys want to help out the channel and you want to get this sweatshirt for yourself or somebody that you love for Christmas, you can go right now, chatsports.com/pitsalute25 to make it happen today. So now let's talk about what Diana Rossini had to say about the Pittsburgh Steelers potentially firing Tomlin, or Tomlin leaving the organization here, and his feelings at this point in his coaching career. She says, "One thing that sticks in my mind from my interactions with Mike Tomlin, he still has the love of football in him. That is without a doubt. But he's tired. He's tired. There's definitely something to him where you're like, man, you've been doing this for a long time." I think around the league, not in Pittsburgh, not in their building, but outside of it, I think this is the season where a lot of people are wondering what Mike Tomlin is going to do next. And then last week, Josina Anderson, who has very good connections to the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin specifically, tweeted this out, saying, "Meanwhile, there's a longtime NFL head coach out there who is considering wanting a change of scenery and has told other teams of these thoughts. If he acts on those lingering feelings, his departure would clearly add to the list of vacancies." And a lot of people are speculating that the person Josina is referring to is Mike Tomlin. And for me personally, guys, I think if Tomlin does agree to be traded somewhere, I think the two most likely destinations are the New York Football Giants and the Tennessee Titans, all right? And the Giants, I think, are probably the most appealing job out there of the jobs that are likely to be available during this head coaching hiring cycle, all right? And the reason for that is that it's a historic franchise and a massive media market. I mean, I don't think Mike Tomlin would necessarily care about that stuff too much. He cares about the historic nature of the organization, but probably not about the media market stuff. But then he's got a young, promising quarterback on a rookie contract in Jackson Dart. You got multiple years of cost control for a quarterback that has really shown a lot of promise this year. Also, you got a number of high-end building blocks on both sides of the football. We'll talk about those guys here in just a second. And then also, from the Steelers' perspective, you'd be trading Tomlin out of the AFC, and you would very rarely have to play the New York Giants, when you do play other teams in the NFC on occasion there. But then you look at the building blocks in New York, man, there's a lot of really good young pieces and a lot of talent on that New York Giants roster. Jackson Dart, we already talked about, but Malik Neighbors, a legit number one receiver. Cam Scatabo, the running back of the future that plays kind of Mike Tomlin-esque, bully ball, that kind of stuff, man. He is an absolute sledgehammer. Dexter Lawrence, maybe the best nose tackle in football. Abdul Carter, a top draft pick last year and, potential future Hall of Famer. He's incredible talent. Brian Burns has been incredible this season as well, collecting sacks left and right. Kayvon Thibodeau is their number 3 edge rusher, so Tomlin would immediately be inheriting an excellent defensive line and pass rush, just like he has here in Pittsburgh. And then Andrew Thomas, a franchise left tackle as well. So they certainly have to build up the offensive line a bit, the secondary on defense. Like, the Giants are certainly not a perfect roster. There's a reason why they currently hold the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, but there is a nice foundation of talent there for Tomlin to build off of. And I think that this would be really good for the Steelers here if you could do the Sean Payton deal here, where you do a first-round pick swap next year. You move up from pick number 14, where the Steelers are currently at, and you move up to the number 2 overall pick, where the Giants currently preside. That way the Giants still have a first-round pick. They don't have to just give that up, but then the Steelers can move up to that number 2 spot to take a future franchise quarterback, all right? You would have your choice between Ty Simpson, Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza. There would only be one team picking ahead of you if you have that number 2 pick, so you'd be landing one of those 3 top quarterbacks if you make this trade. Plus, I think the Steelers would probably ask for that extra second-round pick because that's what the Saints got in the Sean Payton deal. But honestly, guys, that number 2 pick could be so valuable to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The chance to get, a top-flight blue-chip quarterback prospect might be so valuable to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They might just do this deal even without the second-round pick and just do the first-round pick swap, all right? So I could see this being a legitimate possibility where Mike Tomlin could be going to the Big Apple to be the head coach of the New York Football Giants. Could really see it happening, guys. I think Tomlin would potentially agree to go there because of the base of talent that exists there, all that different stuff. But also, I think the Steelers would definitely take this deal, especially if that first-round pick swap is on the table and they can move up to that number 2 overall draft pick. So definitely keep your eye on the New York Giants. But another team to keep your eye on is the Tennessee Titans, another team that has a young, promising quarterback on a rookie contract for multiple seasons in Cam Ward. If he prefers Cam Ward to Jackson Dart, maybe he would prefer to go to Tennessee. But also, they have the potential to have the number 1 overall draft pick this year. They currently hold the number 1 overall draft pick in the NFL draft next year. So if he goes there, you not only would you have the quarterback, but you would also have the number 1 overall pick to choose from if you are Mike Tomlin, which you could use to trade down, get a bunch of picks, and you can restart that rebuild there in Tennessee. Also, Tennessee is investing in a lot of new infrastructure, new training facilities. A new stadium is going to be coming in Tennessee here soon. So maybe that would be something that is desirable for Mike Tomlin. And this would be probably closer to the Sean Payton deal here, where instead of giving up the number 1 overall pick, they'll trade the second-round pick that they have next year, but then they give up their first-round pick in 2027, which could be an excellent draft pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like if Tomlin goes there and that roster still has a ways to go, and it likely would, that would mean that the Steelers could maybe even get into a first-round pick in 2027. So that would be something to consider if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if you are Art Rooney, if you are Omar Khan, which of these deals are you taking? Are you trading up to the number 2 overall pick in 2026 and sending Mike Tomlin to the Giants, or are you going to send him to the Titans, get that second-round pick next year, but then get that additional first-rounder in 2027? Type NYG for the Giants or TEN for the Titans. Let me know which trade you would prefer down there in the comment section. For me, I think I would send him to the New York Giants. Now, to finish up today's show, I want to be abundantly clear. We've talked a lot about the rumors and stuff like that, about Tomlin being traded or fired or whatever. I think he's going to be back in 2026. I think that the Steelers will eventually get to 9-8. I think they'll go 3 for their last 5. We'll see if that's good enough to win the division. Maybe even they get to 10 wins if they really turn things around at the end of this season. And if they get back to a winning record here, I really highly doubt that Mike Tomlin's going to leave. Like Rapp and Schefter said, we talked about earlier in the show, Tomlin's going to have to want to leave. So that's always going to be on the table. It's always going to be a possibility. And if and when that's the case, I think the Steelers, end up trading him. And we talked about some of those possibilities, but I still think by far and away the most likely scenario is Mike Tomlin is back with the Pittsburgh Steelers next season. And if you guys are looking for some potential Mike Tomlin replacements that I would be thrilled to get as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, we put out a video on that earlier in the week here. I think it was actually last week. If you want to check out that video, we'll put the link to that in the top right of today's show, as well as in the comments and description. But, I'll kind of leave you guys with this, man. There's one thing that's for sure. These players in the Steelers locker room for the rest of this season, we got 5 games left. They're going to fight like hell for Mike Tomlin, all right? They love that guy, all right? And that's one of the things that Mike Tomlin has going for him is that, his players will fight to the death for him, and they will play extremely hard for him, especially when, they hear the noise in the national media. Like they have phones, they have social, they see the amount of vitriol that Mike Tomlin gets, and they love that guy. So they're going to go to war for him these final 5 games. There's going to be a very highly motivated Steelers bunch here to finish the 2025 season. And I'll leave you guys with what Aaron Rodgers said post-game after that really embarrassing Bills loss Sunday afternoon. He says, I believe in the coaching staff. I believe in Mike Tomlin. That's why I came here. And players need to take accountability, myself included, and I will continue to. I got to play better. We got to have a Monday to Saturday we can be really proud of. Our best Monday to Saturday, and go out and play our best game and take control of the division. We control our destiny. We got 3 division games, 2 of them versus Baltimore next week and the last week of the season. So make sure you guys predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will this be Mike Tomlin's first ever losing season? The Steelers need to lose 3 of their final 5 games to make that a reality. So give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. For me, Tomlin voodoo, magic, whatever you guys want to call it, I think he'll get to at least 9-8, and they'll win 3 of their final 5 here by hook or by crook. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to never miss any of our videos. We're going to have you guys updated with the very latest surrounding Mike Tomlin's status in terms of his future with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the coming weeks. We'll let you guys know everything that's going on injury report-wise. We'll let you guys know all the different rumors that are surrounding this football team, as well as all the news items that you need to know surrounding the black and gold. So greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right. We got some super chats here. Ponzi, I'm going to actually refill my water real quick if you want to take over for a sec. Actually, no, I got enough water in here. We're good.
Okay.
Tom Pellegrino says Big Ben possibly is OC. Listen, man, just because somebody was a great quarterback doesn't necessarily mean they'll be a great play caller or OC.
I think that's a...
And by the way, if there was one thing coaches need, is that they need a kick-ass work ethic. And that was the Big Ben was not a hard worker. he was just uber.
I think Ben is fine as his armchair quarterback right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think I love where Ben is at, man. I love him being one of us, and somebody that's a commentator, somebody that comments on the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a fan, obviously, of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you got to really dedicate your life to football as a coach, and he's enjoying his life as a dad. And, as an alumnus and a beloved alumnus here in Pittsburgh, I honestly don't think he'd be great as an offensive coordinator. I think it's a fun idea because he's a team legend, but sometimes the best options for coaches are not former players. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And Big Ben, if he was a maniacal worker during his playing days, I would feel better about it. But there's
a reason why Big Ben had his.
It's pretty well documented that he was not the hardest working quarterback in the league while he was here.
What's it? Reputation.
Yeah, exactly. So Yinzer Jake with a 2 says tank for Saiyan 2027, 2028 whenever he comes out.
Does look good.
He's a good player, man. But I hate to break it to you, Yinzer Jake, but the Pittsburgh Steelers will literally never tank. They will always try and maximize what they can do in any given season. And you might disagree with that, but if you want to go lose and you want to go, lose a bunch of games, go cheer for the Cleveland Browns. Go cheer, for the
Titans.
Go cheer for the Titans. All right, this is not the mentality that that Pittsburgh Steelers fans should have. And I understand that sometimes you gotta be bad in order to be good, and sometimes that's the case. But sometimes that's not the case. Kansas City before they got Mahomes was a very good football team. They were a playoff caliber football team, and then they went and got Mahomes, right? So
and they traded up for Mahomes.
And then there's a bunch of teams, the Jets, the Lions, the Browns. All these.
The Lions were pretty bad before that.
What do you mean?
Whenever they traded Matthew Stafford, they were pretty bad for 2 years.
You didn't let me finish my point.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm saying for years, they had top 5 and top 10 draft picks every single year, and they couldn't figure it out. All right, so it's building a team back up and rebuilding a team is more than just having a high draft pick, all right? Because any team can lose a bunch of games and get a high draft pick. What's tough to do is to build a winning culture, to make the right moves in the front office and free agency, and of course in the draft. Hitting on draft picks later in the draft. It's not just about having a high first-round draft pick, right, guys? It's about hitting on the players later in the draft and finding some of those diamonds in the rough. So listen, man, I'm never going to be somebody of the opinion that the Steelers should tank and that this team should attempt to lose games. I think that is a loser's mentality. That's not Pittsburgh Steeler football. And I think that the Steelers can simultaneously rebuild while still trying to maximize their opportunities in the present.
Adam, who makes another point here, he says that look at the Pats, they tanked and turned out well.
I mean, listen, man. Sometimes it works out well, but But listen, man. Did the Patriots get better because they had a high draft pick, or did the Patriots get better because they hired a kick-ass head coach who has an awesome? Because he has an awesome winning culture. I mean, it's a combination of both of those things. But if Drake May sucked, we're not having that discussion right now, right, guys? You have to hit on your draft picks. And what's more important is that, yes, you've been able to fill that roster up with talent, that's good, but you also have a coaching staff and a head coach in Mike Vrabel that's got an awesome winning culture. He's got those players going to war for him every single week. They're locked in. All right, that's what's most important. So, of course, there's examples of teams, they did not play well, and then they get a great quarterback, and then, look, they get it right. But, like, another recent example with that, Ponzi, the Washington Commanders. In one season, they went from the number 2 overall pick to the NFC Championship game. But it was a combination of things. It wasn't just that they got Jaden Daniels, who was an awesome player.
They got Dan Quinn.
They got Dan Quinn, who I think is an excellent team builder, team culture kind of connoisseur, and those players go to war for him. So it's a multitude of different things. It's not just about having a high draft position. And listen, man, the Pittsburgh Steelers, like we talked about in that last segment, they could potentially pull off a trade where they could have a top 2 draft pick next year and they don't have to tank. You can trade Mike Tomlin to the Giants and get that first-round pick swap, and you don't have to tank, but you still get that high draft pick. There's other ways around it other than, we're just going to suck. And, by the way, anybody that's been in a sports locker room, anyone that's been in a part of a team over,
I hate losing.
Everybody hates losing, all right? And nobody respects an organization that is actively trying to lose games. Just put yourself in the shoes of anybody on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster right now. If you felt that Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and Art Rooney shifted gears all of a sudden and actively tried to lose while still putting you at risk, still putting your body on the line on that playing field, how would you feel? You'd probably feel like this organization doesn't care about me. This organization doesn't care about winning. This organization doesn't care about me, my family, the stuff that I sacrifice, the work I put in the offseason. The fastest way to lose the respect of your players is to actively try and lose. Period. All right? So the Steelers are not going to be doing that. They're a respectable organization, and they're going to do things the right way. And I'm hoping that eventually they find the right answer at quarterback, but there's more ways to do that than to just tank. And I just disagree with that philosophy, wholeheartedly.
And I will say this, Sperry. When's the last time that the Steelers had a quarterback that you felt confident in that could take you down and win games consistently?
I mean, prime Big Ben.
Yeah.
But like we talked about in that last video, that's on Mike Tomlin.
That's more of an excuse or more of a reason to move on from this current regime.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, you can always say, these teams, like the Lions. I think the Lions did a weird example where their quarterback, Jared Goff, was the guy to lead them through that tanking. Not really tanking, but, they did suck. But, I mean, if you have a veteran presence that could also be one of your quarterbacks, I think, the Steelers could do that. Where they have a quarterback that's capable of winning games,
well, you know who the Steelers' Goff might be.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with this.
It might be Kyler Murray. And I know, man, I know I just threw a grenade in the comment section, but especially if Tomlin's back, we know Kyler Murray is going to be out in Arizona next year.
People are going already. Oh no!
I know, man. Dude, I'm not the biggest fan of it either, guys. Trust me, but you think about it, it's like the ultimate Mike Tomlin quarterback move. He doesn't throw over the middle of the field very often, or at least he doesn't like to because he can't see over the middle of the field. But he's former number 1 overall pick, just like Jared Goff was. People think he sucks right now. Just like Jared Goff when towards the end of his time in LA. There's just been too many success stories of these first-round draft picks going to other places and having success. And Kyler is, former number 1 overall pick pedigree type of guy, one of the most talented, pure talents in the league. I mean, his arm talent's crazy, can throw from any angle and any platform. His pocket presence is awesome, great rushing ability, all that stuff. I don't know if he necessarily fits the Pittsburgh Steeler way or anything like that, but
cost a lot to get him. Do you think? Maybe a day two pick.
I think a second-round pick gets it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Something similar to the Alex Smith trade from Niners to Chiefs.
Yeah, something like that. But I know fans are not going to like the idea. I'm just saying, I think there's a pretty decent chance Kyler Murray is the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers next year.
It's probably happening. I mean, we've been on fire recently.
Because, like, listen, man, I would prefer to just trade Tomlin to the Giants and then take a quarterback with a top 3 draft pick. Like, that would be my preferred, strategy there, Ponzi. But, like, if I know the Steelers, like I do, they're going to keep Tomlin, they're going to keep Cam Hayward, and they're going to try and go, quote-unquote, all in to try and get to try and get Cam Hayward a Super Bowl championship. Matthew Stafford's probably not going to be available, right? Like all the guys that are like, legitimate, established guys, they're not going to be available. So if you draft a rookie, then you have pretty much no chance of winning a Super Bowl next year. And with Cam Hayward only having 1 year left on his deal, I feel like Cam is going to be like, get me a veteran that actually gives me a chance to win a title or trade me somewhere else. And honestly, if those are my 2 choices, I might choose trade Cam Hayward because you can still get a decent draft pick for Cam next offseason, and you can give him a chance to go to a competitor, try and win a Super Bowl while the Steelers rebuild. I think that would probably be the best for both parties there.
For both parties.
But like the Steelers, just knowing how they operate as an organization, they want Cam Hayward to be a one-helmet guy. So that's not what they're going to do. They're going to go with another veteran next year. And, out of the guys that are going to be available on the open market, Daniel Jones will likely go back to Indianapolis. Okay, I think Mac Jones probably isn't a fit because he's got a noodle arm. I feel like Kyler Murray's the guy that fits what Tomlin likes the most.
I like this comment I see. It's the Kyler Murray, Joe Flacco, and Will Howard quarterback room.
Well, I would take that over Kaboli's quarterback room that he put up yesterday. Did you see Kaboli's projected quarterback room next year? He had Mason Rudolph as QB1, and then you have Will Howard and Drew Allard duking it out to be the long-term option.
I did see that. Yeah, that's crazy.
That is like a worst-case scenario.
I mean, Drew Allard, man.
And I know
I know people will say.
And listen, I know people would want Will Howard, but like unless we see Will Howard by the end of this season, I don't think they're going to give the keys to Cam Hayward's final season to a rookie that's never even played a preseason snap in the NFL. A 6th rounder. Like as much as I like Will and as much as I think he's got some starter upside to him, it's just like if you don't see him in a game at all this year, preseason, regular season, postseason, at all, you're gonna trust him to be your starting quarterback next year? I just don't know if I can do that, Ponzi.
And I think Will Howard really needed to start preseason games in order for me to feel a little bit confident in him, of seeing like what he could do. Even then, it's still preseason. It's not like it matters. But
and by the way, it won't be Joe Flacco here next. It would be Mason. Like if they trade for Kyler, Mason will still be the backup.
Because doesn't Mason have another deal?
Yeah, but Mason signed a 2-year deal. So unless the Steelers release him, which I don't think they will, he'll be the backup. So listen, man, if I had to predict what this quarterback room is going to look like next year, I'm going to say Kyler Murray QB1. I'm going to say Mason Rudolph QB2, Will Howard QB3, and there's going to be a competition between Howard and Rudolph to be QB2. That's what I think it's going to look like. Now, obviously, there's a lot that can change over the next several months, and maybe they do trade Tomlin and they get the number 2 overall pick and they draft Ty Simpson. That would be like the best case scenario as far as I'm concerned. But I kind of feel like they're going to go the veteran route again, guys, as much to the dismay of Steelers fans across the world, and something tells me they're going to try and rehab Kyler Murray. So
people are saying Richardson. No,
Tomlin is kind of like made fun of Richardson publicly multiple times.
That we did not want to have.
You know where I think Richardson goes, Ponzi? I think he goes to Minnesota. I think
that makes so much sense.
I think he competes with McCarthy next year to be the starter in Minnesota.
Man, JJ McCarthy stinks.
Yeah, I know, but like are they just going to give up on him right now?
Well, no, I'm just saying like
they got to bring in they got to bring in some sort of competition.
I think Richardson probably is the guy over there.
Yes, yeah, and Kevin O'Connell will be like, well, one of these guys is bound to take a big leap. Jace Mitchell says, what do you think about new ownership? The Rooney family will never sell this team, ever. They won't, so don't even waste your breath. That's like Cowboys fans asking about, is Jerry Jones going to sell the team? Like, no. It's
going to stay in the Jones family just like it's going to stay
the only way the Rooney family sells the team or the majority stake of the team is if they literally run out of money, which I just don't see happening. Jason coming in with a 5 says Tomlin and a 2026 first to Tennessee for the first overall pick. a second-round pick and a second and 27, we draft our next. That's not going to happen.
I mean, you got to think about it. Like going from draft pick range, you're saying basically Tomlin is worth the second overall pick in the draft.
Well, Tennessee's the first.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you're basically giving them the second overall pick of the draft and 2026 first.
Now, maybe they think about like trading the number 1 overall pick for like Tomlin, Alex Highsmith, and the Steelers' first. Maybe that could be something, but like the number 1 overall pick in an NFL draft is like the most valuable draft asset that you could possibly dream up of.
Let me pull up my draft chart here.
I just don't. Jason, I would say it's not impossible that the Steelers could maybe make a deal for the number 1 overall pick, but I don't think that's the way that it would look.
It's $3,000 for the first overall pick.
Yeah.
And then for the Steelers pick, which is 14,
it's like 11.
It's 11.
Yeah, so it's worth like 3 first-round picks.
Yeah.
The first overall pick is worth like 3 first-round picks, essentially, in total value. So you're essentially saying that, and 2 seconds is pretty much a first as well. So you're pretty much saying Mike Tomlin is worth 2 first-round picks.
And one of them being the first overall.
Actually, you're saying Mike Tomlin is worth 3 first-round picks.
Yeah.
You're saying in that trade, Jason, in terms of just trade value, Mike Tomlin is worth 3 first-round draft picks. I disagree with that evaluation. JV Free, it'd be great if we could pull that off. I would take that deal in a heartbeat. But $2 from JV Free says DC is 100% at fault for all that goes wrong. 100%. DC talking about the defensive coordinator?
I think
Is he talking about Terrell Austin? Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't think Terrell's done a good job this year. I don't. But Lance comes in with a 5. This is John Gruden for quarterback development. When was the last time he developed a quarterback? Rich Gannon?
That wasn't really a development. He just took a veteran quarterback.
Like, when was the last time John Gruden legitimately developed a quarterback?
Maybe.
And Rich Gannon was like a rehab project that was a cast-off before he went to the Raiders. Honestly, when was the last time, John Gruden drafted a young quarterback and developed him?
Didn't he draft Chris Sims? He was bad.
Yeah, he did draft Chris Sims, and he was bad.
I don't know.
So, I don't know, man. I think John Gruden...
I mean, like, maybe his Favre days?
I know... listen, man, John Gruden would be the ultimate vibes hire. The channel would do great if we had Gruden. But I just don't think he's the best offensive mind out there.
He's probably going to take, like, a college job, like USF.
Yeah.
I think apparently they're interested
And listen, I think a big part of head coaching is being able to build a good staff. I think John could legitimately build a good staff. He honestly didn't have a great staff in Las Vegas, though, which is kind of weird. But he's got a lot of connections in the league, no doubt about that. And obviously he's really high on Will Howard. So if you want to move forward with Will Howard as your starting quarterback in future years, Ponzi, John Gruden honestly might be somebody to consider because he's a true believer in Will Howard. $2 from Adam says TJ Watt fell off after his contract. Trade him ASAP. Well, the thing about trading TJ is that the Steelers already are locked in on hundreds of millions of dollars in guaranteed money. So you might as well keep him around. Now, is he worth that money? No. But if you trade him right now, you are eating a crap ton of dead money. And by the way, when I say
108 of that money, the $123.
So it's a $108 million dead cap next year if they trade him.
Well, if they trade him, it would be 94.
94 for just next year. So Adam, you want to take a $94 million cap hit next year without TJ Watt on the team? I sure don't.
I mean, I don't even think that's worth taking on with a first-round draft pick, just straight up.
Listen, man, we're just going to have to eat it for a couple of years here. That's unfortunate. TJ's not worth the money that he's making right now. He's still a good player. He's just not worth the crazy amount of money. He's making more than Myles Garrett, which is just nuts to me.
The only way that they get out of it is 2027 or 2028. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to wait for at least one more year to cut or trade him. You got to at least have TJ Watt on the team for at least one more year. It doesn't make sense to trade him next year. Yami with a 2 says if Tomlin doesn't leave, at least fire the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. But like even in this scenario, Yami, do you trust Tomlin to get this hire right? How many chances, how many cracks at the OC and DC hire has Tomlin had? A shit ton. And he's gotten them almost all wrong. Okay? His best hiring cycle was his first one, when he hired Bruce Arians to run his offense, and he kept Dick LeBeau on from the Cowher days as the DC. Those were his best coordinators. And when he had those excellent coordinators, this team won a Super Bowl. But when Mike Tomlin is left to his own devices and he hires his own guys after that, like he's hiring, the Todd Haley's of the world, and the Randy Fichtners of the world, and the Matt Canadas of the world. And Arthur Smith, I think, has been the best hire as of late. All right, he's better than Canada and probably Fichtner as well, but
it's like comparing
Arthur is not an excellent OC. I think he's an okay OC. He's not great, but he's not terrible, but it is what it is.
Barrel hiring.
And then Terrell Austin is a below average defensive coordinator at best. Do you trust Mike Tomlin to get the hirings right this time? I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. Joseph Rickard with a 2 says, who would you like for the OC? I would love Josh McCown.
Yeah.
Or I would love Mike McDaniel.
You see, I think Mike McDaniel probably gets there. I mean, it really kind of depends on some of the other coaching hires around the league. Because if, let's say, Washington, that OC job came up, I think McDaniel probably goes to the 49ers.
I don't disagree. The question is, who would I like?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying that I would like McDaniel as OC because he's one of the best pure play callers in the game. He turned Tua Tagovailoa.
It would be another Dolphins head coach.
Yeah, it would be another Dolphins head coach. But yeah, man, if you could, my dream staff would be Brian Flores as head coach. Or, honestly, Nick Saban as head coach. Listen, man, the Saban idea is interesting, guys. All right? Now, obviously, Saban is old. He's in his 70s, and it would be kind of a short-term hire. He wouldn't be here for, 10 years or anything like that. But if you're trying to win and win quickly, if you're Pittsburgh, let's say they
74.
Yeah, he's 74, but he grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. He's got nobody in the league has better connections to coaches around the league and coaching
players. Talent
and players for that matter than Saban. That Saban defense is still the standard in college football, and frankly, it's a big part of the standard in modern NFL defenses. Right, man-match coverage is huge in the modern NFL. Landscape, and there's a ton of coaches in the NFL world that coached under Nick Saban at Alabama. I mean, Brian Daboll would probably be his OC here in Pittsburgh. I love Brian Daboll as somebody that can develop quarterback talent. All right, he got a good amount of Jackson Dart this year. Now, obviously, Daniel Jones flamed out, all that different stuff.
I think Brian Daboll with Daniel Jones. I'm not saying he did himself any favors, but he did really get the short end of the leash there with New York. Because they draft Jackson Dart.
Well, there's no talent there,
and he got his guy in Dart, but just because of his reputation with Jones and how it kind of ended out there, I mean, I think he'd be fine as a developmental role OC, not as a head coach.
Yeah, I wouldn't hire Dave. Well, if he listen, man, I still think Daboll someday could be a pretty decent head coach. I mean,
I think so too.
He's an NFL Coach of the Year. All right, he took a terrible team and won a playoff game with that team. In his first year in the league. So I still think he's got a good offense. I still think fundamentally, from a schematic standpoint on offense, he knows what he's doing. He's coached both in college and in the pros, so he understands the differences in kind of the transition that young quarterbacks need to make and what can make that transition easier. Honestly, man, Nick Saban might be if you're trying to win immediately, all right, if you're not looking for somebody to be the next 20-year head coach, and you're just looking for somebody to be the next maybe 5 years before he retires, Nick Saban would be the win now option at head coach.
And another thing about that,
if he wants to come out of retirement,
is that if you did have Brian Daboll on your staff there, you could have Nick Saban for those 5 years, and then
Daboll. And then you just or whatever hot shot DC Saban brings in to be the defensive coordinator for the Steelers. And because Saban would not call plays,
No.
Saban would actually bring in a legit DC, and then, if you like that DC, whoever's better between Dable or the defensive play caller could be the next head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, honestly, obviously the Raiders tried this approach with Pete Carroll, and it is flaming out in a big way right now in Las Vegas. But Nick Saban, I think, is a better coach than Pete Carroll. I think he's got better connections in the league than Pete Carroll does. I think he can put together a better staff than Pete Carroll did. And yeah, man, if Nick Saban was open to it, I would absolutely hire him. I'd hire him in a second.
Some people were saying Todd Haley was Tomlin's best hire after Bruce Arians.
Yeah, after Bruce Arians, I would say Haley was better than Arthur Smith. Yeah, I would say that. But even then, Haley, had his down moments. He really did. But
didn't he flame out?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, big time. But he was. When you're comparing Arthur Smith, Matt Canada, Fichtner, Haley, all the hires made after at OC after Arians left, Haley is by far the most productive. $10 from Joshua Bailey says Joe Shane is desperate and might overpay for Tomlin. Say Tomlin, and a 2026 fourth for the Giants, 26 first. And it's got to be a first-round pick swap, Josh. They're not going to trade the number 2 overall pick for Tomlin and a fourth. That's just not going to happen. But if you want that number 2 overall pick, it's got to be a pick swap, I think. So you can say
the second and 14.
So you can say no pick swap, which is fine, but you're going to have to find another way to trade up if you want Dante Moore, Ty Simpson, or Fernando Mendoza. Says, I'd trade back too. I'm not sold on Mendoza. Ty Simpson is great, though. I agree. I'm not super sold on Mendoza either because, I love the physical talent, but he plays in a super college-y offense, man. Tons of RPOs, screens, not a lot of NFL Sunday type reps on Fernando Mendoza's film. So I honestly think I'm probably going to go into next year. I still got to watch all the film on these guys, but on what I've already watched, I think Mendoza might be my third quarterback on my board this year.
I really like Dante Moore.
I'll probably have Ty Simpson 1, but I really like Dante Moore as well. And if you trade up, if you do this pick swap, Josh, you do the pick swap, you go from 14 to 2. You are guaranteed to get either Ty Simpson or Dante Moore. And if you don't think Dante Moore's coming out this year, his OC is leaving for a different college program. All right, I think the writing's on the wall.
I think, obviously, the Drew Aller whole situation where his draft stock dropped so much just because, he stayed another year.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be the same with Moore because he's a redshirt sophomore. So he could suck next year and then still have another year of eligibility to get back.
Well, I'm more saying, just go whenever you have a good grade on you.
Yeah, I completely agree. If I'm Dante Moore's representation, it's I understand you love Oregon. You can still make money in college football these days, but it's not NFL money, and it's not top 5 pick level money.
You're not going to get paid
like a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
NFL money is just different. It still is different. So I think Dante Moore would be a surefire top 5 pick if he came out. And if I'm representing him, I'm saying, dude, you gotta cash in while you can. But man, I would be thrilled with Mendoza too, man. All the 3 of these guys could be legit franchise options for any team that drafts them. So my first choice, I think, would be Ty Simpson because I would feel the most comfortable starting him day one. If the Steelers' plan is to start this rookie in year 1, Ty Simpson would be the guy I feel most comfortable with. I'd probably have Dante Moore as my second top option, and then I'd have Mendoza at 3. That's probably the way I would rank those 3 guys. Cody Silva with a 2 says, talking trash with the Steelers gang. Check us out. Shout out to Cody. $2 from Shannon says last year Mike Williams, this year Thielen. Yeah, man. Adam Thielen is the Mike Williams addition this year.
And apparently you have a Venmo, by the way.
Oh, okay. Let me see what I got here. Oh, I do. All right. Should probably turn on my ringer so I can actually hear one. But we'll stay live as long as you guys want to stay live and talk ball. Just keep those super chats coming. Adam Thielen is now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I feel like we expected.
Which, the thing about the Steelers offense, guys, is that it's tough to pick up. It is. Because a lot of times they call multiple plays in the huddle. So you got to have a really good grasp of the playbook. And, you know, it's going to be tough for Thielen to get completely on board this week. But, you know, obviously they're bringing him in last minute for a reason. It's because they feel like he can help them. So,
and this is just another thing to remind people. He's not coming into the practice squad.
Yeah.
He's on the active roster.
He's on the active roster because
they
claimed him off of waivers. So that means that you automatically move him to the
contract and you move him to the roster.
Yes, you take his contract for the rest of the season and he's on the active roster. So listen, man, he gives this team a theoretical skill set that they didn't have and that they were trying to get with Jacoby Myers, a big body route runner with good hands. And he's like the great value version of Jacoby Myers. Like, you know, if you asked your mom for Jacoby Myers and she said, we got Jacoby Myers at home, Adam Thielen would be the Jacoby Myers at home. Like, it's kind of how I feel about Adam Thielen. But listen, man, like, he's a longtime veteran. He's good friends with Aaron Rodgers. He's likely thrown with him on throwing sessions in the offseason in the past. You know, he can be that bigger presence that, you know, you can trust on those 50-50 ball situations. Because right now, you know, with the way that it was currently constructed, Ponzi, who are you trusting throwing up a 50-50 ball to? I mean, probably DK Metcalf, but even he is not a great contested catch winner.
Might be Pat Freiermuth or
Darnell. Pat Freiermuth or Darnell is a couple other options there. But and then, you know, you're not throwing up a 50-50 ball to Roman Wilson. You're not throwing up a 50-50 ball to the 5'9" Calvin Austin III.
Jonnu Smith.
You would throw a contested corner route to Adam Thielen, and you would have some level of expectation of him making a play on it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll see how fast he gets ramped up. We'll see if he even plays this week. But
I doubt it. But then again, like Brandon Cooks, but that's a different offense.
Yeah, it's a tough offense to pick up quickly. So we'll just have to see what Thielen does. But obviously not a lot of time to learn the offense. But clearly Thielen feels like he has a chance to play here, or else he wouldn't be coming here.
I really don't know. Like, it's the same thing with Asante Samuel. Like, we were talking about, like, okay, so Darius Slay is gone, right? And then at first, it didn't happen for a while. Then they finally put him in last week, and now Slay's cut. He's gone.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, you got to think that, like, either Calvin Austin's getting replaced in his role. I don't think so. But, like, Roman, it's got to be one of them.
Brian Ruiz with a 2 says, another thing to note in terms of Mike to the Giants is that the Maras and the Rooneys have close family ties. That's another really good point there, where the Maras and the Rooneys have done business in the past. So, you know, I'm sure Mara would be very interested in Mike Tomlin. I'm sure he'll probably at least give a call to Rooney, especially if the Steelers miss the playoffs. I'm sure Mr. Mara will give Mr. Rooney a call and say, hey, we've done business in the past, man. You want to do some business now? And who knows, maybe the answer will be yes, especially if the price tag is right. Because the Giants have their quarterback, right? So, you know, they can do that pick swap in the first round and still feel pretty comfortable. They can still get a really good player with the 14th overall pick or whatever pick the Steelers end up having. And I think
if they miss the playoffs, let's say they lose the 3 out of the next 5, they have a losing season, they'd probably be picking the top 15.
Yeah, probably something like that. So I think the ideal trade package is a pick swap in the first round next year, and then an additional second round pick. That would be the ideal. But honestly, I would think about taking it just with the first round pick swap, just so I could take my franchise quarterback, Ponzi.
Yeah, I agree.
There's just, I mean,
get a coach that can develop.
This could be the opportunity that the Steelers have to draft a quarterback early without having to lose a shit ton of games in a season in order to do it.
Just because you draft a rookie quarterback doesn't mean your team's bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Jaden Daniels. We'd look at that one.
I mean, that's a pretty outlier example.
Well, but it's still even looking at a top 2 quarterback.
Bo Nix last year. Bo Nix was not great last year. They made the playoffs, right? So,
assuming that we have a top 2 pick, you're going to get a top 2 type of guy.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I'd say. Joseph Rickard with a 5 says your thoughts about the Ravens game. You got to stop the run. Got to stop Derrick Henry. Derek Harmon will be out this week. Mike Tomlin confirmed it today, and this Steelers defense has just not been able to stop the run without Derek Carmen. So, unfortunately, I think the Ravens are going to win this week. I think the Steelers will have a better chance to win.
I think it'll be a one-score game. I don't think.
Well, I don't think it'll be a trouncing necessarily. I think the game will be close somewhat. I think it'll be a one-score game, final score. But I think the Steelers will have a better chance when they play them in Pittsburgh in the season finale. So I'm picking the Ravens to win this week. I hope the Steelers win, though. Be huge if the Steelers could win. D-Lo with a 2 says, what happened to MVS? Who knows? We're not, I'm not in the practice facility every day, D-Lo, but my guess is all he does is run fast at this point. And if you have a team that has quarterbacks that can't throw the ball deep down the field, what's the good of elevating a receiver that's only going to get open deep? He doesn't run good routes. He's not a particularly good hands catcher. The one thing he does is he gets open down the field because of his speed. But we've seen Roman Wilson get open down the field with his speed,
and they haven't
been able to hit him. So that might be part of it.
38 days.
Another part of it, D-Lo, is that, like I said, this offense is tough to pick up. He might be having a tough time picking it up, like Mike Williams did last year, by the way. That was a big reason why Mike just didn't play all that much, is because he had a hard time picking up the playbook. I mean, Roman Wilson last year, Ponzi, he was getting healthier towards the end of the season. They said he didn't play. It was reported that he didn't play because he didn't understand the offense enough. So
it's a hard offense.
It's a hard offense to learn, man. It just is. So good luck to Adam Thielen to learn it in less than a week. But this team doesn't throw the ball down the field. And if you have a receiver that all he does is run fast, there's not a whole lot of value that he brings to the table. And if you add him to the active roster, you got to take somebody off of it. So, who are you taking off of it at this point? I mean, maybe Scotty Miller. I don't really see much of the value for Scotty to be on this roster, to be completely honest with you. But, who knows? Maybe they do elevate MVS as well. They get rid of Scotty this week. I could see that happening. But Joshua Bailey with a 2 says Thomas Brown or Gerard Johnson for OC. Thomas Brown, McVay guy, swears by him, has been an OC before, has failed in the past, but hasn't really, in Carolina when he had an opportunity, it was just a terrible offensive personnel. So maybe with better personnel, it'd be better. Gerard Johnson, he's developed some quarterbacks, but, I don't know how much I would love that, to be honest with you, Joshua, but I guess I wouldn't hate it. He's had some success developing quarterbacks in the past. We'll say Thomas Brown didn't do a great job in Carolina, though. We'll see.
I don't know, man.
But I know Brown. I think he's with Chicago. Am I right on that? I think he's in Chicago right now.
Believe so. Let me check.
And I think he's done a pretty good job with them. I think he's their run game coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. And their run game in Chicago has been excellent.
He's a passing game coordinator.
Pass game coordinator.
And tight ends coach.
Got it. All right. I would probably prefer Thomas over Gerard with those two options there. Joshua, appreciate the 2. All right. Well, is there any more?
Nope.
All right. We are good, man. Thank you guys so much for joining us for this breaking news live show. Adam Thielen is a Pittsburgh Steeler. We might have a little bit more on him tomorrow, as well as some more Steelers news and rumors. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications so you know when our videos come out tomorrow. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.